All right, in this recording, we're going to start by covering navigation. It'll probably be 3 or 4 videos that are going to walk you through this. But for this first one, what I want to do is just kind of talk about the navigation system in Bootstrap. So every web project obviously needs great navigation. And in Bootstrap, next to the grid, which you guys have worked with this last week, this is the most important component in Bootstrap. The different types of navigation components are these navs, tabs, pills, and nav bars. Navs are parents to all the other navigation. So in other words, your tabs and your pills and the other components that you're going to have are going to be children to this navigation, and I'll explain that more in a bit. Your tabs and pills are the same types of components and help you create content within a page that changes when clicked. So nav bars, on the other hand, are typically used for main navigation between pages. Now, although you'll end up using nav bars more often, it's easier to learn about navs first before you get into the nav bars, just so that you understand all of the components. The nav bar component itself is extremely complex, so learn to code a basic nav bar and add other features piece by piece. It's extremely rare that a project will use all of these features that are available to you, but you can include things like the branding, color schemes, drop downs, and other form elements within that nav bar. Again, I'll cover this as we work through this. Your branding, color schemes, drop downs, form elements, these are all elements that are responsive, and or they can be collapsible options so that your navigation collapses to a hamburger menu, which you see a lot of times when you are on your phone and then you want to navigate through something. You have to click on that little hamburger up at the top or wherever they locate it in order to get the drop down menu. So if you're coming from a previous version of Bootstrap, you'll find that this new navigation system is a lot easier to code and customize for yourself. This is a completely new component that has been rewritten for this version of Bootstrap. The navbar component is extremely complex to use and to learn. So again, learn kind of the basic navbar, and then as you move through it and you get that, then you can go through and start exploring other elements with that. So creating this basic navigation, what you have are, again, this, language. It's not anything close to being HTML. They use some of the, kind of forms as far as saying nav goes, but it works completely different than what HTML does. So don't confuse the two. With or without ULs, with or without ULs, that's your unordered lists. And then you have nav. So what you do is still, if I can kind of break this down a little bit, you still go in and you create an unordered list, or you can just create the nav tag. And I'm going to show you both in these videos here. And then inside you add nav items for each of the items. The difference is when you're using these without ULs, you put the nav item in the link. So when you're using an unordered list, you put the nav item in the list item, and then inside the link, which would be what we call an anchor tag. You use the class of nav link for each either one of those options, and then inside the nav links you have a couple of options to display the links differently depending on the type of styles that you're using. Now, don't get confused or get frustrated because perhaps what I just said here is kind of confusing and you aren't understanding the difference between all these, you will by the time we're done kind of walking through it and working on these videos. So to go into kind of the styles then, you have active styles and disabled styles. And you can use either one of these styles. The active allows the navigation to show up as active and then looks different depending on the style, which we'll talk about, as we again proceed through this, where it's not just lecturing and you're doing the hands-on. You can also use the disabled class, which would prevent people from clicking on the link, and it just sort of shows us a grayed out link. And again, you'll see that as we kind of work through this. Your nav pills, those will get in the active link something that looks like a little button with rounded edges. And when you use the tabs, of course, each one of the elements looks like tabs. The next part of this is the alignment of all of these. So the nav alignment is justify content center. And these are kind of, I think, self-explanatory. But if you want to center navs, it's just really easy to do with flexbox classes, like justify content center. If you want to align some nav content, you can use justify content end. So this is much simpler than kind of where we were before with Bootstrap. And those of you that don't know Bootstrap at all, you wouldn't know the difference, I guess. Nav fill will make the links fit the horizontal space, but the space of each link is going to be different depending on the content and the width of the text. You can also use the nav justified if you want to force the space in between each element to be the same, no matter the length of the text. And then you can also use the flex column to add different breakpoints to make your navigation more responsive than what it would be for some of these elements up here. All right, so that's kind of walking through the navigation system and all of the elements that are contained in this navigation system. In the next video, we'll cover setting these up and doing hands-on to get an actual navigation bar functioning.